Hello students, today we're learning about a woman named Wilma Mankiller. This book is called Wilmas Way Home, The Life of Wilma Mankiller. And this is a quote from her that says, "My own story has meaning only as long as it is a part of the overall story of my people. For above all else, I am a Cherokee woman." So her background and her heritage is very important to her. Wilmas Way Home, The Life of Wilma Mankiller, by Doreen Rappaport, illustrated by Linda Kuyuk. Full-time jobs for Cherokee people were scarce in rural Oklahoma. Wilmas family cut and peeled wood for railroad ties. They picked beans and grew strawberries. Wilma hauled water from the spring that her family drank from and used to cool fresh milk and butter. But no matter how hard they worked, they couldn't earn enough money for their family of 11. Wow, that's a big family. They had 11 people. Few homes in rural Oklahoma had plumbing or electricity. Wilma's mother cooked on a wood-burning stove that also heated the house her father built. Her father built their house. Like rural families everywhere who could not find work, the Mankillers raised vegetables and hunted and fished to put food on the table. It was a hard life. We were really poor. Dirt poor is how they say it in Oklahoma. Wilma's mother, Irene, was of Dutch-Irish descent. Her parents disapproved of Charlie Mankiller because he was older and native, but Wilma's parents loved each other so much they got married anyway. Wilma's mother taught her the names of trees and flowers. Wilma spent many days outdoors, especially when the dogwood trees were in bloom. My father must have known somehow that I would love flowers, because the Cherokee name he gave me, Atsilvsky, means flower. Wilma spent her nights reading books and playing Chinese checkers carved by her father. He was a great reader and storyteller and passed his love of both to his children. The warmth and love in our family made up for the lack of material things. Wilma's family was rich in love and community. Cherokee people survived through gadugi, the philosophy of helping each other. Families who raised chickens swapped eggs for milk. People traded homegrown vegetables for store-bought goods. We are all interdependent. Do things for others, rather than just for yourself. At get-togethers, the grown-ups talked and played cards. The children played hide-and-seek and kicked the can. They caught fireflies, put them in jars, watched them flash on and off, then let them go. At the gatio, the ceremonial stomp dance grounds, Wilma felt part of the ancient religious songs and dances. When Wilma was almost 11, the federal government created a new policy to relocate Indians from their land to cities, promising good jobs and better housing. Wilma's father did not want to move. He remembered all the times the federal government forced Native people off their homelands. In 1838, at gunpoint, government soldiers forced Cherokee men, women, and children to leave their homelands in the Carolinas and Georgia. They were marched 1,000 miles west in the freezing winter and sweltering summer. Sweltering means hot. Many were whipped along the way. Disease and starvation struck. More than 4,000 Cherokees died on this forced removal west, which Wilma's father referred to as Ansilagi. All Cherokees. They were brought on the trail. Most history books refer to these tragic events as the Trail of Tears. Wilma's father saw relocation as one more way to separate Indians from their people and to destroy their culture. But he was finding it impossible to get work in Oklahoma. Perhaps city life would give his children a better future. Wilma did not want to leave her home. I cried for days, not unlike the children who had stumbled down the Trail of Tears. Life in San Francisco, California shocked Wilma, so her family was forced to move to California. No more fragrant dogwood blooms, no more flowering trees, no more hills and green valleys, only buildings close together and some people sleeping in the streets. Instead of starlit skies, glaring neon lights, no more singing wrens, which is a type of bird, only blaring sirens and car horns. She said, "One day I was here, and the next day I was trying to deal with the mysteries of television, indoor plumbing, neon lights, and elevators." These were all new to her. There were no better jobs and no better housing. The family missed their friends and relatives. What emotion does it look like Wilma's feeling? That tear's telling me that she looks sad. At school, when the teacher called the roll, Wilma's classmates laughed at her name, and she wished she could disappear, because Mankiller is not a very typical name if you're not Native American. But her parents told her to be proud of her name. The family was given this name because in the early days they guarded village homes. When enemies attacked, these warriors fought back. Wilma's classmates mocked her clothing and her Oklahoma accent. She tried to lose her accent, but she couldn't. She said, "It was not that I was much poorer than the others, but I was definitely from a different culture." So this is her class. And they made fun of her because she was different. Seeking community, the family went to the Indian Center in San Francisco. Her father worked to open a free health clinic for Indians. The family met other Native people who also longed to return to their homelands. All agreed this federal policy was a disaster. She said it robbed us of our vitality and sense of place. Wilma hated city life. She didn't like to live in a city, like how we live in Los Angeles, which is a city. She kept running away to her maternal grandmother, who lived on a farm 81 miles away. Finally, her parents sent her to live there. She said, "The hard work and fresh air were so good. The year on the farm was just what I needed." So she got to spend some time away from the city and on a farm. Wilma married when she was 18 years old. Within 2 years, she was the mother of 2 girls, so she gave birth to 2 babies. It was the 1960s, an era of protest. So this wasn't now, this was a long time ago. Black Americans marched for equality, Latino farm workers went on strike for better wages, young and old demonstrated against war, women met in groups to talk about their lives. Native people protested the taking of tribal lands. She said, "I began to have dreams about more freedom and independence." Wilma started college. She went back to the Indian Center and shared her life with other Indians. Her husband was not pleased with her new interest and friends. She said, "Hugo expected me to step completely away from the Indian Center and from my birth family." Starting in November 1969, hundreds of indigenous people took over Alcatraz Island, a former prison in San Francisco Bay. They claimed it for Indians of all tribes. 4 of Wilma's siblings were among the occupiers. Wilma visited often and helped raise money. Reporters visited and listened and learned about the 500 years of government abuse of Native people. They wrote about the many broken treaties, and non-Native Americans were reminded that the entire country was once Indian land before it was taken away. So Native Americans were the first people to live in our country. It was life-changing. It was the first time I saw Native people stand up and say, "We will hold this island until people notice us." Before, I had a lot of feelings and didn't know how to articulate them or frame them. After 19 months, government police forcibly removed the protesters, but their struggle for their rights continued. So they were fighting for what they believed in. Wilma got a job at the Oakland Indian Center working with children. When she needed support or money for projects, she turned to Native people, and they always helped. She took her daughters to visit tribal communities in California. They ate traditional foods, attended traditional dances, and listened to traditional stories. She said, the The wise elders, the keepers of the medicine, the storytellers were my best teachers. I felt like a newborn whose eyes have just opened to the first light. Her path ahead became clear. Wilma separated from her husband and returned with her daughters to Oklahoma. So now she moved back from San Francisco to Oklahoma, where she was from, to the familiar hills and trees and the voices of wrens and mockingbirds. She attended sacred ceremonies and built a home on her ancestral land. She made new friends and reached out to old ones. Her father died. Her mother and 9 of her siblings moved back too. Cherokee Chief Ross Swimmer hired Wilma to work for the Cherokee Nation government. When he saw how hard she worked, he gave her more responsibility. She went back to finish college. She said, I felt whole again for the first time since my childhood. Why do you think she felt whole? Maybe it was because she moved back home to Oklahoma. 2 years later, Wilma almost died in a car accident. Her sister Linda cared for her through 17 operations. So she had 17 different surgeries done at the hospital. Wilma faced many more illnesses, and each time, family and friends helped her. Her brother and niece donated their kidneys to save her life. During the long healing process, I fell back on what elders call a Cherokee approach to life. To think positively, to take what is handed out and turn it into a better path. So through all of this, through her sickness, she was staying positive. 18 months later, Wilma returned to work. Chief Swimmer asked her to develop new projects in rural Cherokee communities. Wilma and co-organizer Charlie Soap went to Bell, a community of 350 people. Jobs there were few. Homes were run down. Almost no houses had running water. Wilma saw that in Bell, as in her community, these Cherokee people had survived through Gadoogie by helping each other. Those who fished shared their catch. Hunters shared their meat. Young people cut wood to heat elders' homes. So everybody helped each other. Wilma and Charlie believed that the Cherokee people of Bell knew best what they needed to do to better their lives. For a year, they met with them and listened to them. Map out what they should do first. The Cherokees wanted running water. She said, I had an abiding faith in the ability of Cherokee people to solve their own problems. So even though they had a lot of hardships, they were working hard to fix them, and they worked together. Wilma applied for grants to fund the project. The community worked in teams, mapping out the route of the water line, digging trenches through the flint rock and clay, and lugging pipes into ditches to be buried. Team after team, week after week, for 21 months until the pipeline brought water to 81 homes. So they figured out a way to get water into 81 houses. There was no grant money for plumbing for the non-Cherokees in Bell, so their Cherokee neighbors raised it. The Cherokees of Bell began to believe that they had the power to change their lives. They repaired their homes, built 25 new houses, and a community center. She said, the water line and the houses are more than just projects. They are symbols of renewal. This tiny community inspired others around the world to help themselves improve their lives. Chief Swimmer asked Wilma to run with him in the 1983 election. Before the Europeans came, Cherokee women and men shared political power. But European ways influenced the Cherokees and limited the political role of women. Now some Cherokees believed other tribes would laugh if a woman was elected. Wilma received hate mail. Her car tires were slashed. At first, people came to her rallies. Wilma visited people in the 7,000 square miles of the 14 counties of the Cherokee Nation. She answered their questions and told them what she believed in. Family, friends, and Charlie Soap helped her campaign. It was a tough race, but she won. So in their group, she was running for chief, which is kind of like president. And we learned from Barbara Jordan's story that an election is when people are voting. So enough people voted for Wilma Mankiller that she won the election and she became chief. She said, in my household, No one ever said to me, you can't do this because you're a woman, Indian or poor. Of course, I would not have listened to them if they tried. So she believed in herself. She knew she could do it. Most men on the tribal council did not support her, but Wilma forged ahead, creating programs to better the economic lives of her people. In 1985, Chief Swimmer left to work in Washington, and Wilma became principal chief. 2 years later, she ran on her own and became the first woman chief of the Cherokee Nation, the second largest Indian nation in the United States. The third time she ran, she was reelected in a landslide. Wow, so she was the first woman to ever be chief of the Cherokee Nation. That's amazing. Prior to my election, young Cherokee girls would never have thought that they might grow up to be chief. Wilma found personal happiness too. Her work relationship with Charlie Soap had turned into love, and they got married. During Wilma's 10 years of leadership, the Cherokee Nation revived a tribal high school, built 4 health clinics, 2 daycare centers, and a Job Corps training center. New businesses, a cattle and poultry ranch, gift shops, and a motel were created, bringing pride to her people, along with millions of dollars to better their lives. So she raised money for her community too. Wilma's work brought world attention to the Cherokee Nation and to Wilma, and pride to all Native peoples. Unfortunately, her many illnesses, because remember she was sick, led to her early death. She died when she was 64 years old. But her vision and accomplishments remain a model of how leaders should lead and how all people can empower themselves. She said, "Women can help turn the world right side up. We bring a more collaborative approach to government." And this is a drawing of her. And one last quote from her. She said, "We are a revitalized tribe. We have kept the best of our old way of life and incorporated the sounder elements of today's non-Indian world." So this was our real story about Wilma Mankiller, a Native American woman. She was the first female chief of the Cherokee Nation. So as always, now we can work on our biography. So this is our usual template, where you first put the person's name, what they're famous for, a drawing of them, and 4 facts. And remember, facts are things that really happen, which are different from opinions, which is what you might think about something. But if you can't print this out, you can also do this on a normal piece of paper. So you first can fold it in half, the long way, hot dog style, and then down again. And when you open it back up, you'll have 8 parts. It'll give you enough space to do all of the things. So first at the top, you write biography. You write your name, the date. Today, the person's name is Wilma Mankiller, and she was famous for becoming the first female chief of the Cherokee Nation. This is my attempt at drawing her. And the 4 facts I wrote about her is fact 1, she is a Native American woman. Fact 2, people made fun of her name. Fact 3, she followed her dreams. And fact 4, she was a leader. So these were my 4 facts, and you can copy them or you can think of your own. And the scan of this is below in the description of the video. Thank you for watching.